Hello, are you ready for some more sacred texts? The way this course is organized, I'll do several lectures on major religious traditions, and then in between, I'll do a lecture on something that might be a smaller religious tradition, but one that's still interesting in different sorts of ways. So from the ancient, massive, continuously expanding canon of Hinduism, we're going to jump to a related tradition that's nearly its opposite, at least with regard to scripture. Sikhism is one of the youngest of the global religions. In English, we sometimes say Sikhism and sometimes Sikhism. I know Sikh or Sikhism sounds a little strange in English, but that's the way that Sikhs themselves pronounce their religion, so we'll go with that. Sikhism began in the 15th century in the Punjab region of India, now divided between India and Pakistan. And today it claims nearly 30 million believers scattered around the world. Yet wherever they go, Sikhs show reverence for a particular sacred text whose form is exactly fixed. In fact, every official copy of the Adi Granth, and it means the first scripture, has exactly the same page numbering, so there's no need to cite its contents by chapter and verse. Sikhism is a religious tradition that comes out of Hinduism, though it has elements in common with Islam as well. So like Hindus, Sikhs believe in reincarnation and karma, and they see salvation as an escape from the cycle of rebirth and redeath, a liberation whereby they merge with God. Yet like Muslims, they're monotheistic. Their temples, called gurdwaras, have no images or idols, and they reject the caste system, believing that all people are equal. In fact, one of the primary acts of charity associated with Sikh temples is free communal meals, where everyone, regardless of caste or social status or even religion, can eat together. Sikhs stress the importance of good works rather than rituals, and they value ordinary life over asceticism or renunciation, and they strive to keep God in mind at all times, living lives of honest labor and generosity toward those in need. One of their slogans is pray, work, and give. They also have one of the most distinctive relationships with Scripture of any major world religion. Many faiths show great respect for their sacred texts, but Sikhs take this to an extraordinary level, treating the Adi Granth as if it were a living person. The religion began with revelations to Nanak, the first guru, who lived from 1469 to 1539. It makes him a contemporary of Martin Luther. At about the age of 30, Nanak had a vision in which he was taken up to God's heavenly court and commanded to rejoice in God's name and to teach others to do the same. Upon his return, Nanak announced that God is neither Hindu nor Muslim, and the path which I follow is God's. Over the next quarter century, Nanak went on 4 long journeys throughout India and its surrounding lands, accompanied by a Muslim musician named Mardana, to spread his message of reverence for God's name. According to Nanak, there is one God, eternal and unchanging, beyond form and gender. We're separated from this one God by ignorance and sin, but he's manifest throughout the cosmos, in our individual souls, and in the divine word that comes through the gurus. The concept of word is closely associated with God's name, which isn't a specific title. He can be many, many things, but the name is rather an expression of divine reality, and God himself is considered the true guru. Remember, guru means a teacher. God's grace can bring humans into mystical union with himself. I say himself, but God is not exactly male, and he can free people from reincarnation, particularly if they meditate upon his name and live wholesome, productive lives. Nanak spread his message through singing hymns that he had written himself, and eventually, some 974 of his poems became part of the Adi Granth, though only 4 of them refer to contemporary events. Most of the time, they refer to God in sort of generalized, universal ways. Unlike the Mahabharata or the Bible, the most sacred text of Sikhism does not include narrative. It's focused on timeless, eternal truths rather than on the mundane facts of history. And these spiritual insights are often expressed in beautiful poignant images. For instance, Nanak once sang to God, "You were the ocean, all-knowing, all-seeing. How can I, a fish, perceive your limits? Wherever I look, there you are. If I leave you, I burst and die." Before his death, Nanak appointed as his successor a follower and fellow poet named Angad. Strikingly, Angad wasn't one of his own sons. And then this pattern continued through 10 gurus, although several of the later gurus were related to one another. Over the course of 2 centuries, Punjabi Sikhs gradually became more and more distinct from other Hindu religious movements. Remember, Hinduism encompasses a wide variety of movements. The second guru standardized a new script of 35 letters called Gurmukhi, and it means from the mouth of the guru. And he used that script of 35 letters to write down the sacred hymns of Nanak. Imagine a text so sacred that it needs its own alphabet. Today, Gurmukhi is used to write all sorts of things in the Punjabi language. The third guru established a new birth, marriage, and death ceremonies and emphasized the importance of the langar, those are the free kitchens in the Sikh temples. The fifth guru, Arjan, is a key figure in the story of Sikh scripture. Not only did he build the Golden Temple in Amritsar, which is the holiest site of Sikhism, he also selected nearly 6,000 hymns written by 4 of his predecessors and himself for inclusion in the Adi Granth, which was formally established as the sacred text of the Sikhs in 1604. Somewhat surprisingly, the Adi Granth also included songs that had been composed by 15 Muslim Sufis and Hindu sants. Okay, sant is sometimes translated as saint, but the words are actually distinct. The Hindu word, the Punjabi word sant, comes from sat, or truth. These holy men, like Kabir and Ravidas, had preceded Nanak, so they weren't Sikhs, but the fifth guru felt that their teachings were in tune with Sikh principles. These sants and Sufis preached bhakti yoga, or loving devotion to God, though they stressed inward spirituality rather than outward religious practices, such as Vedic rituals, or Muslim religious rules, or temple worship, pilgrimages, or caste restrictions. They seemed to be earlier thinkers or religious figures in India who transcended these religious boundaries, and so Sikhs adopted them as their own. 2 years after editing the Adi Granth, Guru Arjan came into conflict with the Muslim Mughal emperor and was arrested and tortured to death, according to tradition, when Arjan refused to remove Hindu and Muslim references from the Sikh holy book. Those references to God being neither Hindu nor Muslim. Tensions continued, and the seventh guru disowned his own son when the young man offered to change a line from the Adi Granth to please another Mughal emperor who felt that line insulted Muslims. After the ninth guru was executed when he refused to convert to Islam, his son, Gobind Singh, the 10th and final guru, militarized the movement in 1699 by introducing the Khalsa. This is an order of soldier saints that includes both men and women who made a vow that they would protect and defend the faith at all times. Today, members of the Khalsa undergo a ritual initiation and thereafter are known by their adoption of the 5 Ks. So it's Kesh for uncut hair, Kara, a steel bracelet, Kanga, a wooden comb, Kacha, cotton underwear, and Kirpan, a short dagger. Gobind Singh added a few hymns to the Adi Granth that had been composed by his late father, the 9th guru, and then in 1708, shortly before his death, he announced that there would be no more gurus after himself. The line would come to an end with him, almost. Instead of another human guru, the perpetual guru of the Sikhs would now be their holy book, the Adi Granth, or as it was now to be known, the Guru Granth Sahib, which means the revered teacher scripture. Today, these are interchangeable titles. You might hear Guru Granth Sahib, or you might hear Adi Granth. I'll use both in the remainder of this lecture. More than 2,000 years earlier, when the Buddha was on his deathbed, he realized that his disciples were anxious about who their next teacher would be. And he told them that the Vinaya, those are rules for monks, and the Dharma, meaning his teachings. The meaning's a little bit different in Buddhism than it is in Hinduism. So Dharma is Buddhist teachings. So the Vinaya, rules for monks, and the Dharma would hereafter be the guide for later generations of Buddhists. But as we shall see in later lectures, the texts claiming to have recorded the teachings of the Buddha multiplied at an alarming rate, or maybe an exciting rate for some Buddhists. By contrast, Gobind Singh indicated that what the Sikhs needed to follow was a very specific book of 1,430 pages, no more, no less. And that book is going to remain unchanged. The Guru Granth Sahib is comprised of 3 sections of very unequal length. It begins with an introductory collection of prayers, starting with the Japji, which was written by Nanak and was recited every morning by devout Sikhs, followed by 2 evening prayers and a bedtime prayer. Okay, those are in that first introductory section. That takes us through page 13. Pages 14 to 1353 consist of hymns or poems that are meant to be sung. They're organized by the melodic modes of classical Indian music called ragas, which are somewhat like musical scales or combinations of notes associated with different moods, different times of the day and seasons. There are 31 ragas in the Adi Granth, and in each raga section, the hymns are subdivided into 6 categories based on the length or the meter. The poems within each subcategory are arranged by the order of the gurus. So each section begins with poems of Nanak, and then those of the 2nd guru and on through the 5th guru. Finally, at the end of each of those 31 raga sections are the songs of the 15 Hindu sants and Muslim Sufis that Arjan, the 5th guru, thought worthy of inclusion in the sacred text of the Sikhs. The third and final part of the Guru Granth Sahib is made up of 77 pages of miscellaneous poems written by the Sikh gurus, earlier sants and Sufis, and 17 court poets. These weren't given a musical setting. Altogether, there are 5,894 poems, 974 by Guru Nanak, 2,218 by Guru Arjan, 1,763 by 4 of the other Sikh gurus, and 939 by poets other than the gurus. It's rather astounding that we can give those exact numbers in this kind of way. The Hindu canon, by contrast, is much more fluid. It's hard to know exactly what's in there. The 10th guru, Gobind Singh, was a prolific poet himself, but out of modesty, he didn't include any of his own verses in the final version of the Guru Granth Sahib. Many of his own compositions were collected in a book called the Dasam Granth. That means the 10th scripture, so it's different than the Adi Granth, the first scripture, which is based on Nanak, right? The Dasam Granth is also considered sacred by Sikhs and is sometimes read in gurdwaras, but it doesn't have the same prominence and reverence as that given to Guru Granth Sahib. The Dasam Granth includes not just prayers and hymns, but also long legendary narratives that sound a little like the Hindu Puranas, and they're narrative stories about Vishnu and Krishna, Brahma, and the goddess Chandri. The language of the Adi Granth is mostly early modern Punjabi, the kind used by Hindu sants, sometimes mixed with other northern Indian dialects, along with words from Sanskrit, Persian, and Arabic. The language can be difficult for contemporary Sikhs to understand, yet the beauty and sacredness of the words as they're chanted or as they're sung convey profound religious emotion. It's not quite as unintelligible as the Sanskrit Vedas are to modern speakers of Hindi, but the sound of the sacred words in the Adi Granth does matter. Another contrast, though, is that the Guru Granth Sahib, the Adi Granth, was always meant to be read and heard by everyone, regardless of caste or gender. As in many religious traditions, the opening verses of Sikh scriptures are given particular attention, and they're thought to be the epitome of Sikh beliefs. The Guru Granth Sahib begins with the first composition of Nanak, the Mool Mantar, which is translated as the root mantra. One respected translation renders it as, "There is but one God. True is his name, creative his personality, and immortal his form. He is without fear, sans enmity, unborn, and self-illumined. By the Guru's grace he is obtained." But you may recall that Sikhs believe that God is without gender. So there's perhaps too many his and he's in that translation. A more recent translation does the same verse in this way. It says, one universal creator God, the name is truth, creative being personified, no fear, no hatred, image of the undying, beyond birth, self-existent by Guru's grace. The beginning of the beginning verse is Ik Onkar, the one creator, referring to God. It's written by combining the number one with the first letter of the word Onkar, which is also the first letter of the Gurmukhi alphabet. So it's almost as if the Bible began with the number one aleph in Hebrew, or one alpha if we're using Greek for the Septuagint. The combination of the number one and the first Gurmukhi letter is often used together as a symbol of Sikhism. The Japji, remember that's that first prayer by Nanak in 38 stanzas, which is recited every morning by Sikhs, goes on to praise the one God who is beyond human understanding, beyond language. It says, by thinking I cannot obtain a conception of him, even though I think hundreds of thousands of times, though I be silent and keep my attention firmly fixed on him, I cannot preserve silence. The hunger of the hungry for God does not subside, though they obtain loads of worldly goods. We can only meditate on his name, right? There's that goes on to say, by listening to the word, the seeker becomes equal to Shiva, Brahma, and Indra. By listening to the word, the seeker becomes praiseworthy. By listening to the word, one learns the secrets of yoga. By listening to the word, one learns the wisdom of the Shastra, the Smriti, and the Veda. Nanak says, devotees find bliss. By listening to the word, sorrow and sin are destroyed. And you can see how Sikh comes into a religious context where people are familiar with Hindu scriptures. And Sikhism says, Nanak says, this name of God that we're contemplating is beyond these scriptures that were already familiar to Hindus. Indeed, the Supreme Being is beyond all of the sacred texts of the world. It says, the thousands of Puranas and Muslim books tell that in realities there is but one principle. If God can be described by writing, then describe him, but such description is impossible. O Nanak, call him great. Only God himself knows how great he is. That's all a quote from the Adi Granth. Nanak sometimes refers to himself in the third person. The hymns of the Adi Granth proclaim the oneness of God and the equality of all human beings, and they offer some general guidelines for living. For instance, on page 1083, the fifth guru proclaims that purifying one's heart is as good as a pilgrimage to Mecca, that good conduct is as good as circumcision, and that the 5 most sublime daily prayers are praising God, contentment, humility, giving to charities, and holding one's desires in restraint. It sort of is a counterpart to the 5 daily prayers that Muslims say, right? Several poems in the Guru Granth Sahib list the 5 vices to be avoided, and those include lust, anger, greed, materialism, and pride. But mostly, the Adi Granth has hundreds, actually thousands, of devotional hymns praising God, many of which offer lovely phrases and striking images. For instance, the 4th Guru, Ram Das, sang, "You are the river of life, O Lord. In you all beings dwell. You are the one. No other exists, your presence encompassing all. This world where we live is your realm of delight. Here where you revel and play, here the bereft can be summoned again, restored to your loving embrace." Or take this Adi Granth hymn from the Hindu sant Kabir, which combines religious doubt with deep trust and devotion. Those who say they know him who is beyond thought and conception hope to go to heaven by merely saying so. I don't know where heaven is. Everyone says, I'm going there, I'm going there. There is no comfort in saying this. Your heart can only be happy when pride leaves you. As long as you yearn for heaven, you cannot live near his feet. Kabir says, how can I understand it enough to explain? Heaven is found in the company of sages. When I say those words from the Adi Granth, It's not quite the same as hearing them sung or chanted, I'm afraid, in the original, but it will have to do for this course. One of the striking features of Sikhism is the importance that believers give to the gurus. One hymn from the Adi Granth says, to reach Nam, this is the name of God, right? The guru is ladder, boat, and raft. The guru is the ship to cross the ocean of the world. The guru is place of pilgrimage and sacred stream. But what happens when that new guru is a book rather than a person, as was announced by the 10th Guru Gobind Singh? When we're looking at religious texts, we're interested in the content, what they actually say, but there are other ways to approach texts as well, and part of it comes from how texts are used or the role that they play in communal worship or communal relations. And in this case, the Adi Granth takes a remarkable place in the lives of Sikhs around the world. In fact, the Guru Granth Sahib is the center of all Sikh ceremonies, and Sikhs treat their sacred text as a living guru. So in a Sikh house of worship, or Gurdwara, the name means a doorway to the guru, a copy of the Guru Granth Sahib takes a very central place. It's brought out every morning and placed up on a throne with a canopy over the top, and then it's draped with richly embroidered cloths, sort of treated like you'd treat a king, maybe. It's opened up with great ceremony, and it's fanned throughout the day with a whisk. When people come into a Gurdwara, they cover their heads, and they remove their shoes, and they bow to the Guru Granth Sahib. Then they sit on the floor, listening as the Adi Granth is read, or sung, or interpreted, and this goes on all day long. People can come and go as they wish. In the evening, the book is ceremoniously closed and then taken to its resting place until the next morning. The Guru Granth Sahib speaks to worshippers directly through a practice called vak. The word means reading. In the morning, the book is opened at random, and then the passage at the top of the left-hand page is read, which is considered a hukam. It's an order for the day. This may happen in a home, when a family does this, for an individual or for a family. It may happen in a Gurdwara, where it provides sort of a verse of the day, a thought of the day, or an order of the day for the whole congregation. And a daily order from the Guru Granth Sahib in the Golden Temple in Amritsar is made known electronically to Sikhs all over the world every morning. There's actually an app for that. It's the Guru Granth Sahib that makes the Gurdwara. Any place the text is, that place is rendered holy by its presence. Some homes have a special room for the text, or it can be taken to less spacious homes or hotels or other hired halls for weddings and other ceremonies, but it is always treated with the utmost respect. Whenever the Adi Granth is transported, it's wrapped up and carried on top of someone's head, and it's often accompanied by a procession with people singing hymns or sprinkling water before it or waving a whisk to keep it cool and ward off insects. Like a beloved friend or teacher, the Guru Granth Sahib is there at all important milestones of a Sikh's life. When a child is born, a closed Adi Granth, copy of the Adi Granth, is allowed to fall open at random, and then the child is given a name that begins with the first letter that appears on the top of the left-hand page. The Adi Granth is present, and its verses are recited at the ceremony when Sikhs are initiated into the Khalsa. Remember this order that protects the religion. And that initiation is sort of like a baptism, with initiates drinking and being sprinkled with water that's been made holy by stirring sugar into it with a sword. Sikhs are married when the bride and the groom walk around the Guru Granth Sahib 4 times in a clockwise direction as specific hymns from that text are recited. Sets of hymns from the Adi Granth are recited every morning and evening, and the last evening hymn is also sung at the death of a Sikh as he or she is cremated. Sort of a lovely imagery there. In addition, at times of celebration and sorrow, when a child is born or moving into a new house or getting a new job or birthdays, engagements, or on the other side of things, sickness or at times of death, it's customary for friends and families to read the entire Adi Granth aloud, nonstop, day and night in shifts. Any Sikh who can pronounce the Gurmukhi script, male or female, old or young, is allowed to participate as a reader, and it usually takes about 48 hours to get through the text from beginning to end. Celebrations at the Gurdwara are often marked by non-stop singing of the entire Adi Granth, and those are sometimes shared with neighbors through loudspeakers. It's now possible to download audio files from the internet of the Guru Granth Sahib being read or sung so that Sikhs can listen to their holy scripture, their sacred book, continuously. I would recommend giving this a try. What you'll want to do is you'll want to go to YouTube or to the internet and type in the word kirtan. Kirtan means devotional singing, and it's specifically for Sikh ceremonies. And then you can hear what it sounds like for the Adi Granth to be recited or sung in this sort of lovely, continuous musical performance. Sikh families and individuals often read the Adi Granth at a slower pace, though the sacredness of the book means that not all families have their own copy. So it's not really like the Bible. To show proper reverence, the Guru Granth Sahib needs to be taken from a special resting place, preferably its own room, every morning and then returned every evening. Okay. Not everybody has an extra room in their house, so most Sikhs make do with smaller volumes of daily prayers and hymns from the Adi Granth, which don't require the same level of care and devotion. In fact, a complete copy of the Guru Granth Sahib, even in translation, is a little hard to come by. Sikhs don't mass produce them the way that Buddhists or Christians or Muslims do with their holy books. Probably the easiest way to gain access to the entire Adi Granth is through translations that have been posted online, such as the Khalsa Consensus Translation. With this continual reading and reciting and singing of the Adi Granth from beginning to end, you might imagine the joy and satisfaction that Sikhs feel whenever they come to the beautiful hymn by the fifth Guru that concludes the book. So the book ends by saying, "Three things have been put into this dish: truth, contentment, and deep reflection. With them has been mixed the name of the Lord, its sweet nectar sustaining all. He who eats and enjoys it shall be set free. He who tastes this food will make it his own forevermore. By clinging to God's holy feet, we cross the ocean of existence and out of the world's darkness come to the light which pervades all." And then the Adi Granth comes to a close. And of course, Sikhs would want to start reading it again. I should note in my own conclusion that Sikhs don't worship the Adi Granth, though they do give it the reverence appropriate to a beloved Guru, through whom the one God speaks. Their remarkable connection to a sacred text is similar in some ways to other religions, but it's also rather distinct. For instance, Hindus revere gurus, as we saw in the Upanishads, but their sacred compositions did not go easily or quickly into written form. They stayed oral for a long time in sort of a teacher-to-student transmission. We'll see in future lectures how Mahayana Buddhists sometimes thought of Scripture as an embodiment of the Buddha, and they treated such texts as they would sacred relics. But they didn't exactly treat it like a living Buddha, and in any case, there were lots and lots of scriptures rather than one single book. We'll see also in future lectures how Muslims show great respect for their own holy book, the Quran. And that their Muslim respect for the Quran may have influenced Sikhism, but Islam's attitudes towards scripture, in turn, were influenced by Christian and Jewish precedents. In the next lecture, we'll examine the case of Judaism, which was perhaps the first faith to define itself by a strictly limited written canon. It was a revolution in world religions, which came about, in part, because of the Roman destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70 CE. We'll talk about that next.